Plato, the self is an immortal soul. Plato believed that the self is an synonymous, meaning to say having the same meaning with the soul. This philosophy can be explained as a process of self-knowledge and purification of the soul. Specifically, he introduced the idea of a three-part soul self: reason, physical appetite, and spiritual or passion. First, reason. The divine essence that enables us to think deeply, make wise choices, and achieve a true understanding of eternal truth. 2. Physical appetite includes our basic biological needs such as hunger, thirst, and sexual desire. 3. Spirit or passion includes basic emotions such as love, anger, ambition, aggression.
These three elements of ourselves are in dynamic relationship with one another, sometimes in conflict. Plato believes it is the responsibility of reason to sort things out, exert control, restoring harmonious relationship. Plato believes genuine happiness can only be achieved by people who consistently make sure that their reason is control of their spirit and appetites. In his theory of form introduced the concept of the two worlds of form, non-physical ideas, and world of sense reality. While the world of form is real and permanent, the world of sense temporary and only replica of idea world. Plato claimed that sensible world is dependent on the idea world where the concept of soul belong.
Aristotle, ancient Greek philosopher, not consider the body and soul as separated entities. Anything with a life has a soul. Vegetative soul includes the physical body that can grow. A types of soul passes by plants, capacity to grow and product. Not have a capacity to receive, to sense impression or the
Second is the sentient soul, includes sensual desire, feeling, and emotion. And the third is the rational soul, intellectual cognitions, intellectual that allows man to know and understand things.
The Self has an Immortal Soul by St. Augustine, or we should say Aurelius Augustinus Hipponensis. Do you know that he was born at November 13, 354 AD at Tagaste? Died at 28th of August, 430 AD in Hippo Regius, Anaba. St. Augustine integrates the idea of Plato and teaching of Christianity. Augustine believes that the physical body is radically different form and inferior to its inhabitant, the immortal soul. He ultimately come to view the body is a spouse of the soul, both attached to one another by a natural appetite. It means that the soul is a real substance that exists indifferent from the body, and he said that the soul and the body makes up a human. He asserted that the soul is immortal because it possesses truth, because the soul is capable of grasping scientific truth, and because truth is immortal, so that the soul.
The self is confusedness. For English philosopher John Locke, the human mind at the birth, a tabula rasa, or the blank slate. He feels that the self or personal identity is constructed primarily from sense experiences, or more specifically, what people see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. For Locke, consciousness, awareness, and memory of previous experiences are the key to understand the self. Luke believes that the essence of self is consciousness, awareness of itself, and thinking, reasoning, and reflecting on it.
Scottish philosopher David Hume suggests that if people carefully examines their sins, experience thought, process of introspections, they will discover that there is no self.
Expression are the basic sensation of people's experience such as hate, love, joy, grief.
German
pain,
philosopher Immanuel Kant believes that we construct the self. It is the self that makes us actively organizing and synthesizing all of our thoughts and perceptions. Kant believed that the self is an organizing principle that makes a unified and intelligible experience possible. It is metaphorically a behind-scenes experience, and it uses the categories of our mind to filter, order, relate, organize, and synthesize sensations into a unified whole.
Go.
In other words, the self constructs its own reality, actively creating a world that is familiar, predictable, and most significantly mine. The self is the product of reason, a regulative principle because the self regulates experience by making unified experience possible.
Sigmund Freud. The contributions. Freud's developed the psychoanalytic theory or personality developments, which argued that personality is formed through complex among the three fundamental structures of human mind, the id, ego, and superego.
The self is multilayered. Freud, this transcendental self or ego is not to be found as an entity in consciousness. It is the dynamic organizing principle that makes consciousness possible. One problem with this view of the self is that there is nothing personal about it.
Gilbert Ryle, British philosopher Gilbert Ryle, believes that the self is best understood as a pattern of behavior, the tendency or disposition of a person to behave in a certain way in certain circumstances. Ryle's concept of the human self thus provides the philosophical principle. I act, therefore I am. Ryle considers the mind and body to be intrinsically linked and complex and intimate ways.
He concludes that the mind is the totality of human dispositions that is known through the way people behave. Ryle is convinced that the mind expresses the entire system of thoughts, emotions, and actions that make up the human self.
Paul Churchland, The Self is the Brain. Canadian philosopher Paul Churchland advocates the idea of eliminative materialism, or the idea that the self is inseparable from the brain and the physiology of the body. All a person has is the brain, and so if the brain is gone, there is no self. For Churchland, the physical brain and not the imaginary mind gives people the sense of self. The mind does not really exist because it cannot be experienced by the sense. When it comes to discussing human life, dualism is the idea that the mind and the body are separate. In other words, we all have a physical brain, but we also have a separate mind. Adding to the distinction, dualists have historically asserted the mind is the set of our consciousness. On the contrary, the brain is really just an organ similar to the heart and lungs, because the mind is the set of our consciousness. It's, it's, give, it's what gives us our identity. No, we can't see it, taste it, or touch it.
Question, why do people say with my mind instead of with my brain? Along the same lines, why it is brain shorted? Interestingly, we can find an answer in today's lesson as we explore the works of Paul Churchland, specifically the theories on self and the brain, since Churchland is a modern-day philosopher who studies the brain. Let's first take a look at the same order. Philosophical, the theories on the subject. For much of history, many Western philosophers have held to the theory of dualism when it comes to discussing human life. Dualism is the idea that the mind and the body are spirit.
Merleau-Ponty's the self-embodied subjectivity. Merleau-Ponty by the lived body. Merleau-Ponty means an entity that can never be objectified or known in a completely objective sort of way, as opposed to be body as object of the dualist.